We all sat down near the fireplace as Grandpa rested his back on the armchair holding a glass of wine. Every winter, my sister and I come to visit him. My grandpa is a retired Army general who now lives in these hills owning a small tea garden. I love coming here to relax my mind from the hustle and bustle of city life. My sister Amy lives in Montreal, so she too loves spending some family time here. After our parents died in a car accident, Grandpa is the only family we have. Apart from all these reasons, visiting Grandpa carried a particular purpose. Amy and I both enjoyed hearing about his life experience. His days in the Army were filled with terrifying incidents. Until today, they gave us goosebumps just by hearing from Grandpa's mouth. Also, he had this amazing ability to narrate those experiences in such a picturesque manner that it left us stunned and speechless at the end. We have heard many incidents, and each stands out to be unique in its own way, except this one that we heard last winter. Picking up from where I began, Amy was sitting opposite of Grandpa, and I was standing in front of the window watching the snowflakes floating in the air. The house was warm, and the dim lights created a perfect environment for a scary story. Amy took a sip from her hot chocolate and said, "You never told us a horror story, though."
"You mean stories of seeing ghosts? Do you believe in ghosts, darling?"
"I don't. But do you?" Grandpa smiled and looked at me. I said in a firm voice, "I don't believe in ghosts either." I noticed Grandpa getting aloof, as if some memory carried back to his mind. No one spoke for 5 seconds, and all we could hear was the sound of the wood burning in flame. Staring at the trembling fire, Grandpa exhaled a deep breath and said,
"Well, I can't assure you about the existence of ghosts, because when this happened, I was going through a traumatic phase mentally. So, some can say it was my imagination, but somewhere deep down, it felt so real to me."
"Please tell us, Grandpa. It will be perfect for tonight," I said excitedly. Grandpa starts the story.
"Back then, I was posted in a small village in Utah that was being evacuated overnight due to an already speculated attack. We all expected the enemy to strike in the morning, but they started to destroy our base camps right before dawn. On that chilly winter night, we did all we could do to resist their unexpected attack, but many soldiers got injured and many died on the field. I was shot in the arm and would have bled to death on the battlefield if not for my fellow soldiers who saved me and took me to the Army hospital. The Army hospital was old and has been there since World War II. Due to the serious injury, I was shifted to the emergency care ward with all other injured soldiers battling for life. Though the daytime went by somehow, the nights were tough to spend in that hospital. The constant smell of medicines and chemicals hit me hard after dark. 2 nurses used to be assigned for each ward, holding 50 to 60 soldiers per emergency ward. Some of them had massive injuries like 80% burn wounds or shot in the head but still survived somehow. Some had to be amputated to stop their entire body from going to a septic shock. Screams and cries echoed in the hospital hallway as these injured soldiers withered in pain. I still remember this one soldier who was admitted to the next bed beside me. He lost half his face in an explosion and still managed to survive. He slept all day with heavy sedatives, but sometimes at night, he woke up screaming in pain every time the nurses dressed his wound. The nurse shed tears while removing the blood-soaked gauze from his face. Chunks of flesh came off every time fresh wounds received a touch. That day, I felt war is much more about suffering and torture than glory and pride. Anyways, I mostly spent the day in bed even though I was perfectly able to walk. The doctor prescribed complete bed rest after taking out the bullet, so I had to follow his instructions. The hospital often suffered power cuts at night. Now in the middle of a war, this was hardly an issue to complain about. Every patient in the emergency ward had urinals attached along the bed, so they don't have to get up, and most of them weren't in that condition to do so. But I, on the other hand, was quite better health-wise. So, after a point peeing in a urinal bag while lying on the bed, started to feel a little uncomfortable for me. The washroom was on the end of the corridor across the lot, and I knew the nurses won't let me walk there at night. But one night, I felt the urge to pee and decided to do it like a man. I got up on the bed and looked around. The entire emergency ward was lined up with beds on both sides. Candles were placed in the corner to give light. I saw one nurse dozing on a chair nearby and the other going for her rounds. I thought, this is the ideal situation. Before the nurse returns, I can easily go and come back to bed after finishing my business. Also, not walking for a long time started to hurt my legs. I got down from the bed supporting my arm at the saline stead and stood on the ground. A sense of relief blossomed in my mind. Slowly and steadily, I walked to the nearest corner and picked up a candle to lead my way in the dark. Because the corridors had no light, each nurse carried a candle to make her way during the rounds. I came out of the room and found a vast empty corridor standing ahead of me. The pale moonlight came from the high-rise glass window and created a shadowy effect throughout. I started walking holding the candle gently. The hospital is so big that if I lose the light, I can easily lose my way here. As I left behind the emergency ward, I stepped into a world of darkness and dead silence. The subdued chirping of the crickets outside was the only thing I could hear at that point. I was walking on my own when I suddenly realized someone is following me. I stopped and turned around, but there was no one in that enormous corridor except me. I thought it was all my imagination, so I shrugged it off and started to walk again. But after a few seconds, that same feeling of being followed started to bother me. No matter how many times I stopped and turned back, I didn't see anyone. When I was almost near the washroom, I heard a painful cry. It was as if someone is whimpering in pain. I know the second emergency ward is upstairs, and I have to come far away from mine. So hearing sounds from that ward is almost impossible for me. I said in a firm voice, "Who is it?" No reply came, and the cry just grew louder. Suddenly, it started to come close to me. I raised my candle in the air, trying to look if someone is coming towards me. Whoever was crying came near me and stopped all of a sudden. Standing in that dark corridor with nothing but trembling candlelight, I felt an unknown fear. I said in a scared voice, "Who are you? Do you need any help?" No reply came, and the cry just grew louder. It started to come close to me. I raised my candle in the air. A rough, painful voice spoke.
I can't see."
I thought maybe a soldier got lost in the dark, and obviously he lost his vision, so he is trying to find his way back to the emergency ward. I said in a fumbled voice, You can come with me. I can take you back to bed. Here, holds my hand." I stretched my hands toward the darkness in front of me so that the blind soldier can reach out. I waited, staring at the pitch black corridor. I could hear my own breathing as I waited for this man to find his way in the dark. A second went by. 5 seconds went by. But still, there was no sign of him. I was about to walk ahead to look for him when I heard running footsteps rushing towards me. A hand came up from the dark trying to grab my hand, and I was almost going to hold it when the owner of the hand appeared in the light as well. I screamed in horror as a disfigured body stood in front of me. The soldier is not blind. The part of his head over his lips was cut off. Blood and flesh was hanging from this vicious wound. The lips moved one last time and said,
"I can't see."
I fainted on the floor right then and there. When I woke up, the sunlight from the window fell on my face. A nurse and doctor stood right next to me and discussing something with a serious face. The doctor gave me a strict warning not to leave my bed. They said they found me unconscious near the washroom after hearing my scream. As long as I stay there, I never left that room, be it night or daytime. The day I finally recovered and got discharged, I asked the nurse about a soldier coming here missing more than half his head, to which she replied, "Many people died here, and it's impossible to keep track of their injuries. But there is a saying in this hospital, that those who died a painful death still roam the corridors at night. The souls of these dead soldiers still try to find their way back to life without realizing they have died long ago."